Hello and welcome. Get ready for an exciting journey into the mysterious and the supernatural. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to stay updated on more thrilling stories. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the tale. It was a cold and stormy night when the small town of Black Hollow was plunged into darkness. Sarah, a young journalist, arrived in Black Hollow to investigate the strange disappearances that plagued the town. The town square was deserted. The only sound was the howling wind and the creak of a rusted swing in the playground. Sarah's first stop was the old library, rumored to hold secrets about the town's dark past. Inside, the air was heavy, filled with the scent of mildew and decay. Sarah found a book with a faded cover titled The Curse of Black Hollow. As she read, she learned of a witch who was burned at the stake centuries ago, vowing revenge on the town. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the library, but no one was there. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah decided to visit the old church at the edge of town. The church was eerily silent, and Sarah felt as though she was being watched. On the altar, she found an old diary belonging to a priest who had fought against the witch. The diary spoke of rituals performed to keep the witch's spirit at bay. As Sarah read further, the candles in the church suddenly went out. She heard whispers in the darkness, growing louder and more frantic. Panicked, she ran out of the church, only to find the streets of Black Hollow shrouded in an unnatural fog. Sarah's flashlight flickered as she ventured deeper into the fog, hearing faint cries for help. She followed the cries to an old, abandoned house at the edge of the forest. Inside the house, Sarah found walls covered in strange symbols and writings. She realized these were warnings left by the previous victims of the curse. The floorboards creaked, and Sarah turned to see a shadowy figure watching her. She screamed and ran, but the figure followed her, its footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Sarah burst out of the house and ran into the forest, but the fog seemed to grow thicker with every step. She stumbled upon a clearing where an ancient stone circle stood, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The air in the clearing was heavy, and Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of dread as whispers filled the air. One of the stones had a carving of the witch's face, her eyes seeming to follow Sarah. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble, and shadows rose from the stones. Sarah turned to run, but the shadows formed into a grotesque figure blocking her path. The figure spoke in a deep, echoing voice. "You cannot escape the curse of Black Hollow." Summoning her courage, Sarah held up the priest's diary, reciting the protective ritual. The shadows recoiled, screaming in agony as the runes in the diary glowed brighter. Just as the ritual reached its climax, the shadowy figure lunged at Sarah with a deafening roar. The light from the diary exploded, banishing the shadows and leaving the clearing eerily silent. Exhausted but alive, Sarah collapsed to her knees, clutching the diary. As dawn broke, the fog lifted, and Black Hollow seemed almost peaceful again. Sarah returned to her car, knowing the curse was lifted, but forever changed by what she had seen. As she drove away from Black Hollow, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was still watching her. Back at her apartment, Sarah opened the diary again, unable to resist its pull. She noticed a new page had appeared, written in a language she didn't recognize. The words seemed to shift and change as she stared, forming a warning. "It's not over." A sudden knock at her door startled Sarah, and she froze, clutching the diary tightly. As she approached the door, the lights flickered and a cold whisper filled the air. "You can't escape me." Sarah hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob as the whispering grew louder. The door creaked open on its own, revealing an empty hallway bathed in an unnatural red light. A figure stepped into view, its face obscured by a hood, and it raised a hand, pointing directly at Sarah. Sarah slammed the door shut and backed away, but the whispers now came from inside the room. The lights flickered violently, and the room seemed to shift and warp around her. She turned to see the hooded figure now standing in the corner of her room, motionless. The figure whispered, "You opened the book. Now you belong to me." Summoning all her courage, Sarah screamed and threw the diary at the figure. The diary exploded in a burst of light, and the figure dissolved into smoke. Sarah collapsed to the floor, the room now eerily silent, as if nothing had happened. She thought it was over, but the diary reappeared on the desk, untouched. Terrified, Sarah grabbed her phone to call for help, but the screen only displayed the words, "It's too late." The lights went out completely, and Sarah was left in total darkness. From the darkness came the sound of heavy breathing, moving closer to Sarah. A pair of glowing red eyes appeared in the shadows, staring directly at her. She screamed as a clawed hand emerged from the darkness, reaching for her. Just before the hand could touch her, the diary glowed brightly, banishing the darkness. The light revealed Sarah sitting alone in her room, as if nothing had happened. But the diary remained on the floor, its cover now bearing a new symbol, a blood-red eye. Outside her window, the fog crept back in, and a shadowy figure watched from the street below.
Today, we'll tell you a story that will make you look over your shoulder. The story of Melissa, who once encountered a secret hidden in an abandoned house. Get ready for a chilling journey. Melissa was in a small town, visiting an old friend. The locals told tales of a cursed house on the outskirts, a place no one dared to visit. Curiosity got the better of her, and one evening, she decided to find this house, following an overgrown ancient path. Melissa stepped into the abandoned estate at the end of the long-forgotten road. Inside, it was dark and cold, the air thick with the smell of dampness. Her gaze was immediately drawn to a large antique mirror covered in dust and cobwebs, standing in the center of the room. It looked as if it had been waiting for her. Her footsteps echoed through the room as she approached the mirror. It seemed strange. Its reflection of the room appeared slightly distorted, as if the mirror showed more than just reality. A chill ran down her spine. She reached out to wipe away the layer of dust, but as her fingers touched the glass, the surface rippled like water. At that moment, she heard a faint whisper that seemed to emanate from deep within the mirror. The whisper grew louder, forming words she couldn't understand. She turned around, feeling someone's presence behind her, but the room was empty. Only the shadows on the walls seemed to move, as if they had lives of their own. Suddenly, the mirror darkened, its surface turning black as night. Within it, a figure appeared, its face hidden beneath a hood. It raised a hand pointing directly at Melissa, and its whisper turned into a loud, menacing voice. Melissa stumbled back, but the floor beneath her feet creaked and began to give way. She tried to keep her balance but fell, screaming, into the darkness below. In her final moments, before losing consciousness, she heard the voice from the mirror. "You should not have come here." She woke up in a strange room where everything was upside down. Furniture, the chandelier, even the paintings on the walls hung inverted. In the corner stood the same mirror, now covered in bloody handprints. Melissa stood up and tried to approach the mirror, but black droplets began to seep from its surface. The liquid spread across the floor, forming sinister shadows that started moving towards her. The shadows coiled around her legs, and she felt herself being pulled downward. She screamed, but laughter echoed from the mirror, drowning out her cries. It felt like the end, but at the last moment, light suddenly filled the room, and the shadows retreated. Melissa collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, but the mirror stood still, as if nothing had happened. On its surface, new words appeared. "This is only the beginning." Melissa stepped onto the creaking porch and pushed open the heavy wooden door. It swung open with unexpected ease, revealing a spacious hall filled with the thick smell of dampness and decay. Her footsteps echoed through the empty house. On the walls hung old, faded portraits, and in the center of the room stood a large mirrored cabinet, coated in a thick layer of dust. She approached the cabinet and cautiously wiped the mirror with her hand. In its dim reflection, she glimpsed a figure standing behind her, but when she turned, no one was there. A chill ran down her spine. She turned back to the mirror, and this time, words appeared in the reflection, as if written from the inside. "Leave while you still can." Suddenly, a dull thud sounded, as if something heavy had fallen upstairs. Melissa flinched, but curiosity drove her to climb the old staircase. On the second floor, a long, narrow corridor stretched before her, with closed doors on either side. At the end of the hallway was one door, slightly ajar and creaking in the wind. She cautiously approached the ajar door and peeked inside. The room was nearly empty, except for an old table with a diary lying in the center. The diary looked untouched for years. Its cover bore a strange symbol, a circle with intersecting lines in the center, and the words, "Do not open." Conflicting emotions overwhelmed Melissa. She knew she should leave the diary alone, but she couldn't resist the urge to see what it held. Summoning her courage, she opened the diary. On the first page was a trembling handwritten note. "Whoever reads this will awaken them. Now you are next." The light in the room began to dim, and the shadows on the walls started moving, as if they had a will of their own. Melissa stepped back, her eyes fixed on the diary, which now glowed with a faint red light. The glow intensified, and strange symbols began to rise from the pages, floating in the air. The symbols connected, forming a face that stared directly at her. The face spoke in a low, hissing voice. "You have awakened us. There is no escape now." Melissa tried to close the diary, but its pages turned on their own, revealing new entries. The new pages showed drawings of creatures with long claws and empty eyes that seemed to move if you stared too long. One of the drawings began to glow, and a shadow emerged from the page, taking the form of a tall, distorted figure. The figure stepped forward, and Melissa felt a coldness seep into her bones. She ran for the door, but the figure blocked her path, its empty eyes glowing faintly red. Terrified, Melissa backed away, her breathing quick and shallow. The figure didn't move, but its presence was suffocating, as if the air in the room had grown heavier. Slowly, it raised a hand, and dark tendrils extended from its claws, wrapping around Melissa. She tried to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. The dark tendrils coiled tighter, freezing her to the core. In desperation, she grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at the figure, but it passed through as if the figure were made of smoke. The figure leaned closer, its whisper filling the room. "You should not have opened the book. Now you are one of us." Melissa felt something change inside her, as if the darkness from the figure was seeping into her. Her hands began to tremble, and the veins in them turned black, as though something was crawling beneath her skin. She screamed in pain, but her scream turned into an unnatural low laughter that didn't sound like her own. The figure stepped back, seemingly satisfied, as Melissa fell to her knees, her eyes now glowing the same red. Melissa raised her head, her face twisted into a horrifying smile. She whispered slowly, "Now I see everything." She stood, her movements jerky and unnatural, as if her body no longer obeyed her. Approaching the mirror, she saw her reflection grinning eerily, though she herself was motionless. The mirror suddenly cracked, and a dark hand reached out, trying to grab her. She jumped back, but the mirror shattered into thousands of shards. each reflecting her grotesque face. From the shards rose thick black smoke, swirling around her and turning the room into chaos. Suddenly, the smoke cleared, and she found herself in another room, a circular hall with stone walls bathed in an eerie blue light. In the center stood a massive altar upon which lay the same book, its pages glowing and turning on their own. Voices echoed from all directions, whispering words in an unknown language. Melissa felt herself drawn to the book. Her hand touched it, and a blinding flash of light engulfed her, making her lose her balance. When she opened her eyes, she was back in her car. Everything seemed normal, but in the rearview mirror, she saw her eyes still glowing red. This is where Melissa's story ends. But who knows what comes next? Perhaps she is no longer who she once was. Today, we will tell you a story that will make you think, is it always safe to answer the phone? A story about a girl whose work night turned into a real nightmare. Anna worked as an emergency service operator. The night was especially quiet, and she was almost dozing off when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was weak and trembling. "Please, help me," a child's voice whispered. Anna immediately tensed. She could hear soft sobs through the receiver, followed by the creak of floorboards, as if someone was carefully walking near the child. "Are you home alone?" Anna asked cautiously. "No, he's here," the child whispered. A quiet sound came through the line, like a door slowly opening and someone stepping into the room. "Who is with you?" Anna asked. But at that moment, the call was cut off. The screen displayed, "Subscriber unavailable." A strange feeling settled in her chest, as if something was telling her this was no ordinary call. Anna checked the system. The call had come from a phone registered to an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. That was odd. She decided to pass the information to the police, but something told her she needed to know more. The house had been abandoned for years, but locals told strange stories about it. They said a family once lived there, but they mysteriously disappeared. Since then, no one had dared to enter. Anna couldn't just forget about the call. She decided to contact the police. But at that moment, the phone rang again. It was the same number. "He's coming," the child whispered, followed by a faint sound, like someone breathing heavily into the receiver. A chill ran down Anna's spine. She heard footsteps creaking closer to the child. Anna opened her mouth to say something, but suddenly there was a sharp noise on the other end, and then silence. Anna gripped the phone, listening intently. The line was dead, but she thought she could hear faint breathing. "Hello?" she called cautiously. No response, just an eerie silence. And then, a sharp scraping sound like nails dragging across wood. Anna shuddered. The sound felt wrong, unnatural, as if someone wanted her to hear it. She decided to check police records. Entering the house's address, she froze. Years ago, a tragedy had occurred there. A family of 3 had vanished without a trace. The only thing left behind was an old telephone with the receiver torn off. The phone rang again. Anna jumped, but answered. This time, the voice was different. Male, raspy, slow. "You shouldn't have answered." The line went dead. Her heart pounded wildly. This wasn't a prank. Someone knew she was looking for information. Someone was watching her. The office suddenly felt unbearably quiet. She quickly dialed the police and reported everything. The operator on the other end fell silent, then spoke in a hushed voice. We've received calls like this before, but no one who answered ever made contact again. Anna knew she should stop, but something inside her pushed her forward. She grabbed her car keys and headed for the house. The road felt endless. The house looked even more terrifying in person. The windows were dark, the door slightly open. Inside there was dead silence, but Anna knew she wasn't alone. She stepped inside cautiously. The floorboards creaked under her feet. The air smelled of dampness and something else, something metallic. Suddenly, a faint noise came from upstairs, like someone walking down the hallway. Anna froze. In the dim glow of her flashlight, a shadow flickered on the staircase. She wasn't alone. Someone was standing at the top, watching her. Anna held her breath. Soft footsteps echoed from above. Someone was moving carefully down the corridor. Her palms were sweaty, her heart pounding. She took a step forward, but the floorboards betrayed her with a loud creak. At the end of the hallway, a door stood ajar. It swayed slightly, as if someone had just touched it. Swallowing hard, Anna moved forward. Each step echoed through the empty house. Behind the door was a room with an old telephone in the center. It looked as if it had been used recently. Anna stepped closer, but suddenly the phone rang. She flinched. Her hand trembled as she picked up the receiver. "You're already too close," a voice whispered. At that moment, the door behind her slowly closed with a dull click. Anna rushed to it and grabbed the handle, but it wouldn't budge. She was locked in. Suddenly, the light flickered, then went out, plunging her into darkness. Heavy footsteps echoed in the room. They weren't hers. Someone was there. Frantically, she searched for her phone, but the screen was dead. Then, something cold brushed against her shoulder. "You shouldn't have come here." A whisper sounded right behind her. Anna spun around, but saw no one. Only the icy air against her skin. Her only escape was the window. She ran to it, but outside, there was no street, only endless darkness. She stepped back, panic gripping her mind. The phone rang again. Anna picked it up. This time it wasn't just one voice, it was many. They whispered over each other. "He's coming for you," one of them said. And then, a knock. Slow, heavy. Anna froze, her heart hammering. Someone was at the door. She knew she shouldn't open it, but the knocking grew louder. She stepped back as the door began to open on its own. The creak of the hinges cut through the silence. Beyond the threshold, there was only darkness, but something moved within it. A tall shadow emerged. It stood still, yet Anna felt its gaze. A voice echoed in her mind, inhuman and cold. "You've come too far." Anna bolted down the hallway. Her footsteps echoed through the house, but behind her, another sound followed, soft, deliberate steps. Ahead, the staircase loomed. She raced down, skipping steps, but her foot slipped. She nearly fell. Behind her, the shadow descended, unhurried. Reaching the front door, she yanked the handle. Locked. Frantic, she searched her pockets for the key. Nothing. Behind her, the floorboards groaned. The phone rang again. She turned. The telephone sat on a small table. A second of hesitation. Then she ran to it, desperate for a voice. Anyone real? She picked up the receiver. "You're already here," a deep voice said. Anna froze. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a ghost. It was a person, and he was close. Behind her, a quiet click. The door she thought was locked slowly opened. A rush of cold air swept through the room, and the shadow stepped forward. Anna saw a glint of metal, a blade. Her heart pounded. She had almost no time left. She lunged to the side, knocking over a chair. The crash of breaking glass. She grabbed a vase and hurled it at the figure, hoping to buy seconds. The vase shattered. She ran. She saw the window, her only escape, but it was boarded up. Grabbing a chair, she struck the wood with all her strength. Behind her, heavy breathing. He was close. Another strike. The wood cracked. Another. The glass shattered. She grabbed the frame, ready to climb out, but a hand seized her shoulder. She screamed and wrenched free. She shoved herself through the window, landing hard on the ground. Pain shot through her hands, but she didn't stop. She ran. Looking back, she saw a figure in the broken window. It didn't move. Then it raised a hand and waved. Anna turned and ran, heart hammering, and then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. "I will find you." The phone slipped from her hands. Somewhere in the darkness, quiet laughter echoed. The story was over. Or had it just begun? Today, we will tell you about St. Mark's Psychiatric Clinic, a place for the most dangerous patients. But what if one of them was never supposed to exist? A dark building with a neon sign, St. Mark's Psychiatric Clinic. Rain pours, the parking lot is empty, lightning flashes occasionally. The protagonist, psychiatrist Alex, stands at the entrance, lighting a cigarette. Today is his first day working here. A long, narrow corridor with dim lights. The walls are peeling. The air smells of medicine and mold. A nurse leads Alex to his office. Along the walls, patients sit, some rocking back and forth, others staring intently at him. A spacious yet grim office, a wooden desk, a cabinet filled with medical files, an old patient couch. Anatomical posters hang on the walls. Alex sits down and flips through the case files until he finds a special one. Patient number 47. This is his new case, a dark interrogation room. The patient sits at the table, handcuffed, his face partially hidden in shadow. He slowly lifts his head and smiles. "Doctor, at last we meet," he says in a quiet, raspy voice. Alex studies the patient, holding his file. "Do you remember why you're here?" he asks. The patient tilts his head and smirks. "Are you sure you know who you're talking to?" His eyes hold something unsettling. Alex flips through the file. Multiple victims, brutal murders. But something feels off. He remembers all his patients, but not this one. The photo in the file is blurry, as if the face has been erased. The patient suddenly leans forward. "Doctor, you drink your coffee with 2 sugars and sleep only 3 hours a night," he says calmly. Alex freezes. How does he know that? "I keep having the same dream," the patient continues. "I stand in front of a mirror, but the reflection isn't me." Alex takes notes, but deep down, he feels that this man is hiding something. Alex decides to check the archive, but when he enters the case number into the system, an error appears. Patient number 47 not found. He restarts the program. Same result. This patient shouldn't exist. Alex rushes back to the interrogation room, but it's empty. The handcuffs dangle from the chair, as if the patient simply vanished. On the table lies a note. "You're next." Alex's pulse pounds. He looks around, sensing someone behind him. He whirls around, but no one is there. His hands tremble as he grabs the note. How did the patient escape? Where are the security cameras? The hallway is deserted, the security post abandoned. The monitor flickers, a cup of coffee sits cold. Where is everyone? Why is it so silent? Alex enters the security room. and rewinds the footage. The cameras show the patient sitting there, then suddenly vanishing. The screen glitches and words appear. "Don't look for me." Alex feels a chill run down his spine. Back in the hallway, bloody footprints lead toward the exit, but something is wrong. The footprints are too large. Alex follows them. Suddenly, a door slams shut in front of him, the entrance to the basement. He pulls the handle, locked. A whisper comes from the other side. "You're not ready." Alex holds his breath. He hears footsteps in the corridor. Not just one person, several. "Where is he?" someone whispers. Alex clenches his fists. At the end of the hallway, a tall figure emerges. Its face is hidden in shadow, but Alex knows it's staring at him. The figure slowly tilts its head and smiles. Alex realizes he has to run. He dashes toward another door. It won't open. The figure approaches, its footsteps eerily silent. Alex slams his shoulder against the door. It bursts open, and he stumbles into a dark hallway. Ahead, stairs leading down. No choice. He descends, the cold biting into his bones. At the bottom, a secret room. Shelves filled with files, old computers covered in dust. Alex scans the shelves and finds a folder labeled Project Number 47. He opens it, and his face goes pale. The documents detail experiments on patients. Subject 47. A man stripped of pain and fear. But further down, a disturbing note. He is still here. From deep within the archive, a sound. Something heavy shifts. Alex slowly turns around. Something is moving between the shelves. He grabs an old VHS tape labeled 47 Observation. He finds a player, connects it to a screen. The footage shows a man in a straitjacket. Then, suddenly, he stands up and rips it apart. In the reflection of the screen, Alex sees a figure behind him. He spins around. Nothing. But he hears breathing. Someone was just there. Alex isn't alone. He slowly backs toward the door. His fingers touch the handle. Something yanks it from the other side. His heart stops. The door bursts open. Alex sprints down the corridor. The lights flicker, casting shadows that twist and stretch. Behind him, heavy footsteps. Something is chasing him. He sees a staircase and an elevator. No time for the elevator. He bolts up the stairs, skipping 2 steps at a time. The footsteps get closer. A light fixture above him sparks, then crashes down, shattering at his feet. Not an accident. Someone dropped it on purpose. Alex bursts onto the ground floor, heading for the exit. Locked. Frantically, he searches for keys. Nothing. Behind him, a deep, slow inhale. He spots a fire alarm. Only one way out. Alex reaches for the button. A cold hand grips his shoulder. He freezes. His skin crawls. He turns his head, but before he sees who it is, he's yanked backward. He hits the floor. Above him, a tall figure in a hospital gown, face hidden in shadow. Alex scrambles back, but the walls close in. Nowhere to run. The figure steps forward. The light catches his face. Subject 47. Deep scars, lifeless, empty eyes. Alex realizes this isn't a patient. This is an executioner. Alex grips a fallen crowbar and swings. 47 dodges effortlessly. Then, his hands close around Alex's throat. Darkness creeps into Alex's vision. With the last of his strength, he elbows 47 in the face. The grip loosens. Alex stabs the crowbar into his shoulder. No reaction. Alex runs. Behind him, slow, deliberate footsteps. 47 isn't in a hurry. He knows Alex won't escape. Alex bursts into the stairwell, the exit door just ahead. He shoves it, locked. Behind him, a deep breath. Desperate, Alex spots a fire extinguisher. He He smashes the glass. The door shatters. He runs into the night. Far ahead, the city lights. Behind, the asylum. In a broken window, someone stands, watching. Alex doesn't stop until he reaches the crowded street. Then, his phone rings. Unknown number. He answers. A whisper, "I will find you."